The snowstorm howled across the vast frozen plains of Zira, a distant and icy world on the edge of the galaxy. For miles, there was nothing but white emptiness, an unbroken expanse of snow and ice that stretched as far as the eye could see. The wind picked up, whipping the snow into angry flurries, obscuring all but the most immediate surroundings. Captain Nathan Wells gripped the control yoke of his ship with both hands, his breath fogging up the visor of his helmet. His ship, the Tundra, was the only thing that had kept him alive through the deadly storms of this desolate world. He had been exploring the outer rim for weeks, scanning for any signs of life, but so far, he'd found nothing but silence. Suddenly, his sensors beeped, alerting him to something unusual, a distress signal. He had expected this. Many ships got caught in the meteor storms that often struck the outer edges of the galaxy. But this signal was different. It was faint, barely there, but it had a distinct pattern. Not a random distress call, but one that suggested intelligence. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest as he pulled back on the ship's control, veering toward the source of the signal. His mind raced. Who could it be? And more importantly, was it dangerous? The wind outside howled louder, making the ship shake. The storm was worsening. Nathan gritted his teeth and guided the ship down through the thickening snow clouds, eyes scanning the ground below. The planet was desolate, a sea of ice and snow, with nothing in sight. But then, far ahead, something caught his eye. There, nestled in the snow, was a pile of metal, a crash site, the wreckage of an alien ship. Nathan's breath hitched. This was unlike anything he had ever seen. The ship was smaller than most, clearly built for travel in cold environments, with jagged edges and strange markings. But what caught his attention was the trail of footprints leading away from the wreckage. Nathan hesitated. He could call for backup, but it would take too long. The storm was closing in. He made up his mind quickly. He couldn't leave anyone stranded on this frozen world, not with the weather as harsh as it was. He landed the ship as close to the wreckage as he dared. Opening the hatch, he stepped into the freezing cold, the icy wind immediately assaulting his face. He pulled his jacket tight around his body, then grabbed his rifle, just in case. He followed the tracks, moving quickly as the snow crunched beneath his boots. The footprints led him to a low, narrow ridge, where a figure appeared through the thick snow, a small figure struggling against the wind. At first, Nathan couldn't make out who or what it was, but as he neared, he realized it was a woman, a creature unlike any he had ever seen. She was tall, her skin an odd shade of pale blue that shimmered in the fading light. Her body was thin, almost frail-looking, but there was a certain strength in her eyes, despite the exhaustion that hung heavy on her face. She was carrying someone, wrapped tightly in a blanket. Her child. The alien woman looked up as Nathan approached, and her eyes widened in shock. Her body stiffened, as though ready to flee. But her strength was gone. She collapsed to her knees in the snow, cradling her child close. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. Nathan hesitated, unsure of how to approach. He had never encountered an alien before, but this woman didn't look dangerous. She looked desperate and terrified. "Hey!" Nathan called softly, his voice muffled by the storm. "It's okay. I'm here to help." The woman didn't respond, her face pale and strained, as though she was too exhausted to even acknowledge his words. Nathan moved closer, lowering his rifle to his side.
"I'm not going to hurt you."
The alien woman glanced at him, her eyes full of fear, then down at her child. Her lips trembled. Please, just a bite for my child." Nathan's heart twisted. The words were soft, desperate, and so full of sorrow. It took him a moment to realize what she meant. Food. She was asking for food. He had some rations in his pack. It wasn't much, but it would have to do.
"I can help you,"
he said, kneeling beside her, opening his pack to retrieve a small packet of nutrient paste. "I've got some food. You can share it with your child." The woman stared at the packet, then looked up at Nathan, as if uncertain whether she should take it. She looked at him, then at the bundle she held tightly in her arms. The child, barely more than an infant, was pale and shivering, her face ashen, her breathing shallow. It was clear that the child was gravely ill, and time was running out. "Please," the alien mother whispered again, her voice breaking. She needs it." Just a bite. Nathan's heart went out to her. Without another thought, he tore open the packet and carefully spread the nutrient paste on his gloved hand, holding it out to her. He could see the desperate hope in her eyes as she took it, her hands shaking, barely able to bring the food to her lips. She fed her child the paste first, slowly, as though each small bite might be the last. Nathan watched, silently, unsure what else to do. He had no idea who or what these beings were, but he could see the bond between them. This mother would do anything to save her child. After a few moments, the mother's breathing slowed, and she looked up at him again. There was a mixture of gratitude and sorrow in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice weak, barely above a whisper. Nathan didn't know what to say. He had expected fear, perhaps aggression, but not this. Not this overwhelming sorrow. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. I'll get you somewhere warm." The alien woman nodded, her eyes drifting closed as she finally let go of the tension in her body. For a moment, everything was still, the only sound, the howling of the wind. Nathan looked down at the child. It was clear that survival was uncertain. The little one was fragile, her face pale, her chest rising and falling with labored breaths. He knew that without medical aid, they wouldn't make it through the night. "Stay with me," Nathan whispered. "You're not alone anymore." But the mother's eyes fluttered open once more, and she whispered something he couldn't understand. She shook her head weakly, looking up at him with a deep sadness that seemed to go beyond words. And in that moment, Nathan understood. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a choice. His hand tightened around the rifle. He wasn't going to let them die here. He couldn't. Nathan carried the alien mother and her child back to the shelter he had set up in the remote outpost. The wind howled as he struggled against the storm, but he couldn't let them stay out in the snow any longer. The woman, Zyra, was barely conscious, and her child, though wrapped tightly in blankets, was far from warm enough. The little one's face was pale, her breathing shallow and uneven. Nathan's ship was equipped with basic medical supplies, nothing fancy, but it could help. As he entered the shelter, he gently set Zyra down on the cot he had made for himself, making sure to place the child beside her, where she could rest comfortably. He quickly got to work, pulling out his emergency first aid kit and trying to assess their condition. Zyra barely responded. She seemed to be struggling to stay awake, her body exhausted from the journey and the cold. The small, alien child, on the other hand, was more fragile than he had imagined. She looked like she had been through hell. Her skin, though soft and delicate, was unnaturally pale, and her tiny hands clutched at her chest as if in pain. Nathan's mind raced. He had no experience with alien physiology, no knowledge of how to treat these beings. But he knew one thing: if he didn't act fast, they would die in this cold, barren wasteland. There was only so much food and medical supplies on his ship, and the storm outside made any rescue attempt impossible. He leaned down, taking a closer look at the child. He could hear her faint heartbeat, but it was slow, too slow. She was barely hanging on. Nathan checked his supplies and found a few basic medications. Nothing extraordinary, just the bare essentials for any emergency. He was familiar with the basics: pain relief, fever reducers, and hydration fluids, but nothing more complex. He had no way to know if this child would even respond to human medicine. But he couldn't just stand there. He had to try. He poured a little bit of water into a cup, making sure it wasn't too cold, and gently brought it to the child's lips. She barely stirred, but after a moment, she managed to drink a few sips. Nathan let out a quiet sigh of relief At least she was still alive enough to swallow. Next, he turned to Zyra. Her skin was icy to the touch, and it seemed like she might be slipping into unconsciousness. Her eyes were glassy, but when Nathan touched her shoulder, she flinched slightly, opening her eyes for just a moment. "Stay with me," Nathan whispered, his voice soft.
"You're not alone. We'll get through this." Zyra blinked slowly, her breathing shallow.
She managed a weak smile, but it was clear she was struggling. She opened her mouth to speak, but only a faint whisper came out. "She, my child. She needs more food."
Nathan's heart broke. He didn't have much left, but he knew he had to do what he could.
He opened another ration packet, this time with more protein, and mixed it with some water. Gently, he placed it in the child's mouth, hoping she would be able to swallow a little more. After a few moments, the child seemed to manage more sips, her tiny hands trembling slightly as she drank. Nathan didn't know how much more he could do, but he wasn't going to give up. The storm outside raged, but inside, the shelter was warm, thanks to the small heating system he'd rigged. He kept the temperature as high as it could safely go, watching closely as the alien mother and child continued to rest. He checked his communication devices again, but there was still no sign of any nearby ships. No one was coming, not anytime soon. He was alone with these strangers from another world. Hours passed, and the storm outside only grew more intense. The swirling snow and howling winds seemed to trap them all in this small outpost. Nathan stayed awake, watching over them, making sure the heating system was running and that the supplies remained stocked. He couldn't risk letting them fall further into the cold, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that he was racing against time. As the night drew on, Zyra's condition seemed to stabilize, at least slightly. She managed to speak again, her voice still weak but clearer than before. "Thank you," she whispered. You saved us." Nathan shook his head. "You're not out of danger yet."
But I won't leave you.
Zyra nodded faintly, her eyes closing again as sleep claimed her. She was in and out of consciousness, her body clearly drained from the stress and cold. Her child, still curled up beside her, seemed a little more at peace now, though her breathing was still labored. Nathan sat by their side, his thoughts spinning. What had happened to them? How had they ended up on this planet? Was this just a random crash, or had there been more to their story? He had questions, but none of the answers were clear. All he knew was that they were alive, barely, and that he had to keep them that way. He looked out the window of the shelter, the snow swirling violently outside. He knew the storm wouldn't stop anytime soon, and he could only hope that someone would find them before they ran out of supplies. But deep down, Nathan knew it wasn't that simple. The galaxy was vast, and help might not be coming at all. But he couldn't think like that. He couldn't let them die out here. He had made a promise to himself, and he was going to keep it. As the hours passed into morning, the storm outside finally began to ease, though the snow still fell steadily from the sky. Nathan used this rare moment of calm to gather more supplies, searching through the wreckage of his ship for anything he could use. He found more basic rations, a few energy packs, and some blankets. He didn't know if it would be enough, but it was all he had. As he returned to the shelter, he noticed that Zyra was now awake, though she looked even weaker than before. She was struggling to sit up, her hands trembling as she reached for her child. Nathan rushed to her side, his heart racing.
Zyra, don't move too much.
"You need to rest." "I must stay with her," she whispered. She is all I have left." Nathan knelt beside her, gently helping her lean back against the cot. "You're not alone anymore. I'll stay with you."
You don't have to do this alone.
Zyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and sorrow.
But I don't know if I can save her. I can't do it on my own.
"You're not on your own," Nathan replied softly, his voice steady. "We're in this together."
Zyra's eyes closed for a moment, and Nathan could see the weight of her exhaustion.
She had already endured so much, her world destroyed, her people scattered, and now stranded on this cold planet with nothing but a dying child. The pain was written all over her face, and Nathan felt it in his heart. He knew there was more at stake here than survival. It wasn't just about getting them through the storm. It was about giving them hope, a reason to keep fighting. Nathan reached for the child again, gently lifting her into his arms. He rocked her slowly, doing his best to comfort her. Her tiny body was still so cold, but he could feel her little hands gripping at his coat, as if she were trying to hold on. "This isn't over," Nathan whispered to himself, glancing up at the alien mother. "I'm not giving up." And with that resolve in his heart, he did what he could to keep them both alive, hoping that somehow help would come. He didn't know how long they could last, but he wasn't going to let the storm take them without a fight.